separate people from their behavior, and you will immediately start to feel a shift in how much power others have over your emotions. Because most of the time, when we get angry or bothered, it is not because of the action itself, but because we take it personally. We attach meaning to it. We make it about us. And that is where the emotional sting comes from. When someone is rude, when they cut you off in traffic, when they speak to you in a disrespectful way, your first instinct might be to feel insulted or wronged. But if you can pause and say to yourself, this is about them, this is about where they are emotionally, this is about their mood, their stress, their way of handling life, you free yourself from carrying their negativity into your own space. And this is not about letting people get away with bad behavior. It is about not letting their behavior own you. When you can separate the person from the behavior, you start to see patterns more clearly. You start to see that some people react from fear. Some people lash out because they are frustrated. Some people lie because they are insecure. And once you see that, you stop feeling personally attacked and start feeling more like an observer. You start approaching situations with curiosity instead of judgment. And this is where your power really grows, because now, instead of reacting emotionally, you can choose a response that actually works for you. You can hold someone accountable if you need to, but without carrying anger like a heavy weight in your chest. Think about how much lighter life feels when you stop absorbing every negative action as a reflection of your worth. When someone rolls their eyes at you, you do not have to roll your energy down with them. When someone criticizes you unfairly, you do not have to internalize it as truth. You can say to yourself, this is where they are right now, and I get to decide where I want to be. And this does not mean you become passive. It means you become free, because you are no longer controlled by the emotional storms other people bring into the room. You are the one deciding how sunny or calm your inner world stays. It is also about protecting your peace from the slow buildup of resentment, because anger that is not released turns into stress, and stress turns into exhaustion. And when you are exhausted, you lose focus on what really matters. You might start taking things out on the wrong people or doubting yourself, but when you consistently separate the person from the behavior, you can process what happened without storing it like poison inside you, and this allows you to move forward faster without replaying the same scene in your head over and over. The truth is, we cannot stop people from being rude or careless or unfair, but we can stop making it a personal battle every time they do it. We can decide that their actions are just data points, not definitions of who we are. We can notice them. We can set boundaries if needed, but we do not have to let them decide our mood for the next hour or day. And this shift takes practice, because our brain is wired to react. But every time you pause and remind yourself that this is not about you, you strengthen that mental muscle, and over time, it becomes natural. This is how you protect your emotional energy and stay unbothered, because the more you practice this separation, the more you will find yourself smiling at situations that used to trigger you. You will find yourself walking away from drama without the need to prove a point. You will find yourself being present in your own life instead of being pulled into someone else's chaos. And that is when you truly start feeling unshakable, because you are no longer controlled by the actions of other people. You are only controlled by the standards you set for yourself. Your thoughts about a situation are what create your feelings, not the situation itself. And this is one of the most powerful truths you can ever learn, because most of us believe that what happens to us is what causes our anger or frustration. But in reality, it is the story we tell ourselves about what happened that creates the emotion. When someone ignores your message, your brain might tell you they do not respect you or that you are being rejected, and suddenly you feel upset. But if you told yourself a different story, maybe they are busy, maybe they are dealing with their own stress, the feeling changes completely. And this is where control begins, not outside of you, but in the space between what happens and what you choose to think about it. When you learn to manage your inner dialogue, you stop being a passenger in your own emotional life because your mind is always talking to you, and most of the time it is on autopilot, repeating old patterns of thinking. If your inner dialogue is harsh or negative, you will constantly feel on edge, but if you train yourself to speak to yourself with reason and calmness, you begin to feel steady regardless of what is happening outside of you. The tone you use inside your head becomes the filter for how you experience the world, and you get to decide if that tone will be frantic or peaceful. This means that when someone says something offensive, instead of letting your mind spiral into a story about disrespect or betrayal, you can consciously guide your thoughts toward a more balanced interpretation. You can remind yourself that words are just words until you assign them meaning, and by choosing a meaning that does not inflame your emotions, you stop giving away your power. This is not about pretending that hurtful things do not hurt. It is about refusing to let your thoughts make them bigger than they are, refusing to let them run on repeat in your head. It also means noticing when your thoughts are exaggerating a problem and bringing yourself back to what is real, because our minds have a way of turning small slights into huge problems, replaying them over and over until we are worked up. But if you catch yourself and ask what is actually true here, what is actually happening right now, you often find that the situation is much smaller than the story your mind was building. This practice shrinks the emotional weight of the moment and helps you return to a place of calm where you can respond rationally. Your inner dialogue is like the narrator of your life. It can be a critic or it can be a coach, and you get to choose which one you want to listen to. If you want to never feel angry or bothered by anyone, you must train that narrator to focus on solutions, not drama, to focus on what you can control, not what you cannot. When you shift your thoughts, you shift your emotions. And when you shift your emotions, your behavior naturally follows, and you become the steady person others notice but cannot easily shake. Over time, this practice builds emotional resilience because every time you take control of your inner dialogue, you are rewiring your brain to stay grounded under pressure. You are proving to yourself that you do not have to be a victim of circumstances or moods. You can stay calm even in chaos, and the more you do it, the faster it becomes automatic. So instead of spiraling, you pause. Instead of exploding, you breathe. Instead of feeling powerless, you choose what story to tell yourself, and that choice is where your peace comes from. Using neutral responses is one of the most powerful tools you can have when it comes to staying calm and unbothered, because most conflicts escalate, not because of what was said, but because of the emotional charge we add to our reply. When someone comes at you with anger, sarcasm, or criticism, they are often expecting a fight. They are expecting you to match their energy, and when you refuse to do that by staying calm and responding with something simple like, "I hear you," or "noted," you stop feeding the fire. You send a signal that you are not interested in emotional drama, and this immediately takes away the other person's control over your mood. Neutral responses are not about being passive. They are about being strategic because they allow you to hold your ground without adding more fuel to the situation. When you respond with calm and minimal words, you are not agreeing. You are simply refusing to escalate, and that is one of the most mature forms of strength. It shows that you value your peace over winning a petty exchange. It shows that you can stand in the storm without becoming part of it, and that kind of presence is very disarming for people who thrive on conflict. This also protects you from saying things you might regret, because when emotions run high, we often blurt out words that we later wish we had handled differently. But when you rely on neutral responses, you create space between what was said to you and what you say back. That space allows you to choose your tone, to choose your words, to stay aligned with your values instead of just reacting from impulse. And this is where real self-control is built, not in avoiding conflict completely, but in handling it with grace when it shows up. The beauty of neutral responses is that they make you harder to provoke, because the more you practice them, the more you realize you do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You can acknowledge what was said without turning it into a bigger conversation. You can keep your dignity and emotional energy intact while the other person burns theirs trying to get a reaction from you. And over time, people around you start to notice that you are not someone who can be easily rattled, which actually makes them think twice before trying to get under your skin. It is also a way of keeping control over your own nervous system because the moment you raise your voice or snap back, your body goes into fight mode. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing changes, and suddenly you are not thinking as clearly. But when you stay calm and use a short neutral response, you stay grounded. Your body stays relaxed, and you are able to see the situation clearly, which means you can make better decisions about what to do next, whether that means walking away, setting a boundary, or addressing the issue later in a calmer moment. Practicing this does not make you cold. It makes you intentional because you are choosing not to let someone else's bad mood decide the kind of day you are going to have. You are choosing to protect your own mental space, and that is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself because when you consistently stay neutral, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them that if they want a reaction, they are not going to get it here. And that level of calm authority makes you feel strong, grounded, and completely unbothered no matter what energy walks into the room. Detaching from the outcome is one of the most freeing skills you can learn because so much of our frustration comes from trying to control things we simply cannot control. We want people to act a certain way. We want them to see our point. We want them to behave in a way that feels fair, and when they do not, we feel hurt or angry. But when you realize that your power does not lie in changing them, but in changing how you respond, you stop living in constant emotional tension. You stop measuring your peace by what other people do and start measuring it by how well you manage yourself. When you detach from the outcome, you do not lose interest in life. You simply stop tying your happiness to whether or not things go your way. You stop demanding that people agree with you or validate you or treat you a certain way before you allow yourself to feel calm. This is one of the hardest shifts to make because our ego wants to be seen and understood, but the moment you let go of needing that to feel okay, you take back your freedom because now your peace is not negotiable. It does not depend on someone else's mood or opinion. This is especially powerful in conflicts or tense situations because when you are attached to the outcome, you become desperate to prove your point. You raise your voice, you repeat yourself, you get frustrated, but when you are detached, you can communicate your truth calmly and then let go. You can say what you mean once and leave it there without trying to force the other person to accept it. You give them the space to respond how they choose, but you no longer let their choice dictate your state of mind. Detachment also allows you to think more clearly because when you are overly invested in a result, your emotions get louder than your logic and you start reacting based on fear or anger instead of wisdom. But when you step back and remind yourself that you can handle any outcome, you instantly become calmer and more confident. Your brain stops racing. You can see solutions you could not see before, and you can make decisions based on what is actually best for you rather than just what will make the discomfort stop in the moment. Another benefit is that people can feel your detachment, and it changes the entire dynamic when you are not emotionally attached to winning an argument or making them change their mind. They stop feeling like they have to resist you so hard they may still disagree, but they sense that you are not fighting them, you are just standing in your truth. And ironically, this often makes them more open to listening to you because your energy is no longer pushing against them, but simply standing firm and calm. The more you practice detaching from outcomes, the more peaceful and powerful you feel because you are no longer being tossed around by things outside of your control. You realize that the only thing you truly control is your response, and that is enough. You no longer live in constant emotional chase, trying to make everything perfect. You live in a steady place where you can show up fully, do your best, and then let go, knowing that your worth and your peace are not up for negotiation. Practicing the mental pause is what allows you to stay in control when everything around you is trying to pull you into reaction, because most anger happens in those first few seconds after something is said or done, and that is the exact moment you need to slow down. Instead of speeding up, the pause does not have to be long. It can be one deep breath. It can be counting to 3 in your head. It can be a slight delay before you answer. And that tiny gap gives you a chance to choose how you want to respond instead of letting your emotions take over and run the show. The mental pause is a skill that gets stronger the more you use it. At first, it feels unnatural because you are used to firing back immediately. But as you practice, you will notice that this simple act of slowing down changes the entire tone of the interaction. When you take a breath and speak calmly, it often calms the other person too, or at least prevents things from escalating further. It shows that you are not at the mercy of what just happened. You are aware, you are present, you are grounded enough to stay in control of yourself, even if the other person is losing control of themselves. This pause is also a way of showing respect to yourself because it gives you time to check in with your own thoughts before you let them out into the world. You can ask yourself, is this response going to solve the problem or make it worse? Is this something I will be proud of saying later? Is this even worth my energy? And sometimes you realize that the best response is no response at all, that silence is more powerful than any comeback you could give. And that decision only becomes possible when you slow down enough to think. Another benefit of the mental pause is that it helps regulate your nervous system because anger is not just a mental state, it is a physical state. Your body tenses, your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, and by pausing, you interrupt that cycle. You give your body a chance to reset so you can speak from a place of calm instead of from a place of tension. And that physical calmness is felt by everyone around you. It shifts the energy in the conversation and creates space for resolution instead of more conflict. With practice, you start to use the mental pause, not just in moments of conflict, but in any situation where emotions could take over. You pause before replying to a message. You pause before saying yes to a request. You pause before making a big decision, and suddenly, your life feels less reactive and more intentional because you are no longer living on autopilot. You are living from a place of choice, and that choice is where real emotional strength is built. Over time, this becomes part of who you are, and people begin to notice that you are not someone who is easily triggered. They see that you are thoughtful with your words and actions. They feel the steadiness in the way you handle pressure, and this not only protects your peace, but also earns respect from others because you have mastered the art of staying calm in moments that would have made the old you snap. And that is the kind of quiet power that makes you feel unbothered no matter what is happening around you.